Welcome to Life with Strings Attached. I'm your host, Jamie Gale. On this episode of Life with Strings Attached, we welcome Dave Dunwoodie, founder of Graphite and one of the great innovators in guitar technology. From solving the problem of strings sticking in the nut to creating breakthroughs like Tusk, ratio tuners, and string saver saddles, Dave's work has shaped how guitars sound and play worldwide. His story is one of persistence, curiosity, and purpose-driven design, showing how even the smallest guitar components can transform music. I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with Dave Dunwoodie. I hope that you do as much as I did.
Hey,
hi, Dave. Nice to have you on the show. Welcome to Life with Strings Attached.
Thanks so much. Nice to be here.
Yeah, great. You're how are things there in beautiful Vancouver?
The weather's great. I turned this phone off. Sorry. It's on airplane mode. Okay, I'll just turn it off. Let's try that again. Sorry.
Probably connected to your Wi-Fi. Apple makes everything so convenient these days.
Right.
Yeah.
So weather's great here. It's warm, so it's going to be 23, 24 today. So it's a nice temperature.
Yeah, that's a good human temperature.
Yeah,
I like that. Yeah, great. Wonderful. Well, many of my guests I've known for many years, but I don't know that you and I have ever really had a conversation. I think we may have met at a show once or twice, but it's been very brief if we have. Nothing substantial that I can remember anyways. Right. Please tell me I'm right. Did we?
Yeah, you're right.
Have we ever really talked? Okay.
Maybe briefly by email or something.
Yeah, exactly. But I've certainly been aware of your work and your career for decades at this point in time. And, you've certainly contributed quite a bit to the conversation of the guitar, which is what my work is really about. This podcast, Life with Strings Attached, gives me license to talk to people about anything I want to talk about. But it is 3 out of 4 times at least guitar-centric. Right. And so... But I'm curious to talk with you because I also talk a lot with physicists and material engineers and such about the mechanics, the materiality of sound. And your work is, straight on that. You talk about materials and their effects on sound and functionality, of course, from what I understand about your impetus to getting things going here with the original problem of strings sticking in the guitar nut.
Right.
If I have that right.
Yep, you got it right.
Yeah.
That's where it all kind of started.
Wonderful.
for Graphite anyways, yeah.
Yeah, great. So, Dave, before we dive into any sort of technical stuff, I'd love to get to know a little bit about who I'm talking to, really. Are you born and raised in the Vancouver area, or can you just give me a little bit of your background, sort of the Coles notes, the important parts that if we remove them, then maybe you wouldn't be who you are and doing what you're doing today?
Oh, dear. Basically grew up in the Vancouver area, Surrey, Richmond, Ladner. Yep. Now I'm in Tsawwassen, and our factory is in Delta, so it's about a 20-minute drive for me. So I started. Well, let's see. What are the Coles notes for this? Played a lot of sports when I was younger. Back catcher, goalies, sort of all the kind of key points in a team type sport. And around we were 14 or 15, my friends and I, we all hung out together, rode our 10-speed bikes around, and decided we were going to start a band. To meet girls, so that's the whole thing.
It was that explicit.
It was just.
We got to meet girls. How are we going to do this? We got to start a band.
Yeah, we're all shy. Right, we're all shy guys.
Okay, all right.
Meeting the girls didn't work out so good, but what we did do is we went downtown one day, took the bus downtown. We went into it was the House of Stein back then, and they were selling off their musical instruments, and so came with all the drums and all the cymbals, but when we got home we realized they didn't come with any stands. It didn't come with a kick drum or anything else like that. So I had a guitar, and the bass player got a bass. So we had the vocals, bass, and guitar all out of this one little tack amp. And the drummer hung his cymbals off the sort of the rec room of my house, so he could hit them when they sort of swoop around every once in a while. But
Fantastic.
so we worked long and hard on Jumpin' Jack Flash, and the drummer was good. He picked it up real quick. I think every guitar player learns House of the Rising Sun. So we had the House of the Rising. We'd go just those two songs, Jumpin' Jack Flash and House of the Rising Sun. No vocals, so we're always remembering. Okay, 4 times here, three times over there, back over there. But we got pretty good. Like our bass player could sing really good, and I think it was when we were 16. We almost got signed to. All we played was originals then, and we almost got signed to a record contract. When we were 16, we had a manager, and so he would take us. He had a big 5-ton truck, and we'd set up this is when we finally got cymbal stands and whatnot, and our own amplifiers.
Yeah, yeah.
And he'd take us in the back. We'd have the drum set up in the back of the truck, and he'd pull into McDonald's, and we'd ask the manager if we can play in the parking lot, because McDonald's didn't have eat-in back then. And so we play in the parking lot, and everybody honked their horns for clapping, and that's how we sort of got started. And we played, wrote a lot of original songs, and and of the 4 guys that started in that band, 3 of us played professionally for years and years and years after that. Not always together, but it was a pretty. It was a lot of fun. We didn't meet a lot of girls, but
well, that's wonderful and very entrepreneurial right from the beginning. I mean, pulling in there and playing at the McDonald's. That's great.
Yeah.
I love that.
We got a little bit of experience. Played at our high school, and done well there. We do the lunch hour set, and we moved on from high school. Where to go from there? Then we went on the road, and then we started going out of town in an old Duraline van, or I can't remember. It was one of those vans with the flat nose, and we'd have the drums, everything packed in, and no seat belts, and 3 guys sitting in the back, sitting on equipment, and 2 guys on the front sitting in the seats. And we had some pretty interesting times. You get some gigs up north. In December we're up in Fort Nelson, and very, very cold places up into the Yukon. And
wow, have van will travel.
Yeah. And after that band, we got off the road and kind of broke up for a little bit, and I joined a band from Hawaii, and they were called Hawaii, and they played at the Town Pump in Vancouver. And it was a show band, so they had horns and guitar, and I was another guitar player, and I learned a lot there just from all of a sudden there's these jazz chords coming in, so I picked up Mickey Baker's jazz book and started learning jazz chords, and there's still a great book. I think I just remember I learned so much from that, chord inversions and chord substitutions. And so I played with Hawaii for maybe about a year, and then they're from Seattle, so we played Vancouver and a few places in Seattle. And then they, I believe, decided to go. The band kind of broke up. They had some arguments in between themselves. That's sort of a side guy. And I was home, and I was living with my mom, because it was usually mostly on the road. And my mom said, "Well, you can get a job or something like that if you're not playing in a band." So she said, "Here, go answer this ad." And so I went to this place that I didn't know what it was about, and it was selling vacuum cleaners, filter clean vacuum cleaners. And it was probably the best sales training I ever had, because they really worked hard off of scripts. In my first 2 weeks there, we'd go there at 10 in the morning, 2 hours of sales training, then do 1 call in the afternoon, go home, come back at 6, do another hour sales training, then two calls where go to the person's house, and then you have a lovely little plant for you, and for taking the filter queen demonstration, and it would be about an hour and a half long demonstration of and after you learned your pattern, like 2 weeks, I was terrible. But after you learned your pattern, it's like learning a song. If you know a song, once you know the song, then you can jam outside the lines and come back in and wait. It was exactly the same with Filter Queen. It was all of a sudden,
Yeah.
once I got the pattern down, then I could be funny. And it felt like being on stage, and you're doing all your things, you put in little jokes and somebody would do this and go off way off sideways somewhere, but then you knew when to bring it right back again. And so I got really, I ended up being, after the first month, the #1 sales guy at Filter Queen. And there's guys that have been doing it for 20 years. But it's long hours. It's from 10 in the morning till 10:30 at night, or 11 at night, getting home. And I went into my favorite music store, and it was November, and I said, this store called Paul's Music. And I said, Jim, why don't you hire me here just for December? I'll just work strictly on commission, And he said, yeah, okay, sure. And I took off there because nobody else really knew how to do sales or anything. And I was, giving them features, benefits, and blah, 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 blah. And so he kept me on. And I worked there for 5 years, just strictly on commission, and I done really well on there. And when I was there, I started. I brought in Schecter guitars into Vancouver, and Schecter back then was just parts. So they had pick guards, bodies, and necks, and blah, 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 blah. And we had a repair shop there, and so we started, making custom guitars for everybody in Vancouver, and it got to be a pretty popular thing of guys coming in, and some guys from Chilliwack, and some big Vancouver bands back then. We'd make all these parts casters and stuff with Schecter parts, and we done really well. And then I decided to quit and bring in my own parts into Canada and sell to music stores across the States, and basically do what we did with Paul's Music and Schecter. I started bringing in ESP from Japan, and ESP back then was parts too. They weren't full guitars. So I brought in ESP parts, and I had another company that bring in bodies and necks, and we'd paint the bodies and necks. And then I started opening up stores across mostly Western Canada, and setting them up with sort of how to do custom guitars for their customers. And I done good on the sales, but I wasn't so good on collecting bills. So I'd have a good month, and then it was going to be like 3 months of trying to collect bills, and it was just like, it was a little. It was hard. I'm not a real aggressive, outgoing guy. Collected bills, and while I was doing that, the history of guitar, everybody used to put graphite in the nut slots of their guitar.
Yeah, little pencil shavings. Yeah.
So I started thinking, well, boy, if you could make the whole nut out of graphite, it'd be great. And so I tried. I mixed some epoxy up. I got some graphite powder and made a little silicone mold in a lid of a mayonnaise jar, 2 little blank Strat nut and a blank Gibson nut, and made it, and it dried. I took it out in the sunlight, and look at it sparkle. It's beautiful. And then I went to see how strong it was, and it just broke in half. And pure graphite is pencil lead, basically.
Yes.
So it's not going to be it's not going to be strong.
Right.
But in the daytime, I used to go to the library. No internet or anything back then, or fax machines, and I'd go to the library and I'd read sales books, marketing books, and engineering books. And one time I was reading this book in the library on engineering, and there's this new polymer out that was graphite, nylon, and Teflon. And that would make a great nut.
Yeah.
So my mom lent me $5,000, and for the $5,000, I got a mold made with those 2 nuts that I tried before, a blank Strat and a blank Gibson nut. And I had to get an ad in the Guitar Player magazine, and back then it was an electro set. So I had my graphics guy, went to a graphics place, and he laid out a 1/4-page ad for me for a Guitar Player. And that had to be in like 2.5 months before the publication. So I had to get that ad done and sent out. And he's going, well, what's the name of your company? I go, Well, it's Graphite, Graphite. We'll do Graphite. So we hit Electroset Graphite. That was,
Yeah.
and so that ad came out, and well, that
And
ad.
no one else had the name Graphtech, and you
No,
just
I didn't know.
You didn't check it, nothing, just on the spot.
Yeah, just on the spot.
Lucky you, man.
Yeah. Oh,
All right,
so,
great.
So we
So the ad came out?
Well, yeah, event ad. Well, the ad was in transit, and the 2.5 months wait. I ordered a box of this material from the States, and then I got a mold made, an injection mold made. And the day that the ad came out in Guitar Player was the day that we made our first nut. So I decided it was the first self-lubricating, probably one of the first black nuts out in the market. And
Yeah.
so, and I put it, nuts then for sale for $1. So I put mine at $10, you know, just some positional marketing. And so we got our first order. A guy ordered a strap nut, and I had a string retainer too. And so that started it. And that's, you know, as I sell a little bit more, I was basically doing mail order back then. So I had to add in Guitar Player magazine, and music stores would get a hold of me, and then I'd send them up order form and a picture of the nuts and a handy little order form, and they get ordered with, you know, 10 of this and 4 of that, you know, sort of two different price levels. And then I would go to, Richmond is near Point Roberts in the U.S. So I'd go to Point Roberts, and I had a post office box there, and ship the parts from Point Roberts, and then I'd come back the next week, and there'd be some mail order money orders that the store said where they sent a check, and I was going, wow, this is way nicer than running around in Canada trying to get people to pay their bills. Everybody's paid me in advance, so I started to focus a little more on that, and that's sort of how it got going.
Or what year is this?
1983.
1983.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right in the zone there, man. That's the big sort of the point of explosion of all the superstrats and all the parts guitars, right? I mean, that's Jackson, Charvel, ESP, Schecter. I mean,
Floyd Rose.
That's all of it. Yeah. Collar, all that stuff is happening right then. So that's you were right along with it.
Yeah,
that's great, man.
Yeah, I thought I was gonna be a millionaire right away. And then Floyd Rose came out with the locking nut, and Eddie Van Halen and Kramer, and that took off. And so I took a little bit of a back seat to that, but I just kept working on it. It's a lot of persistence doing that, and I was playing at nighttime again too. So it was I didn't have to rely on Graphtech. I'd play at night, coach my daughter's baseball teams during part of the day and evening, and then go off and do my gigs and do the same thing again. Yeah. So it's basically on the kitchen table. Then I moved into the living room, and then after a couple of years, I rented out a little 200 square foot office space in a back alley in Richmond, and finally had a computer and could do mailing labels and keep doing the mail order stuff with Graphtech. And slowly, as I got a bit more money, I'd put another cavity in that mold and have another nut, and then a bass string retainer, and then I'd done an acoustic saddle. And I finally got a distributor in New York, Bob Bromberg, and he used to work at Gale, and so he was my distributor in New York. And he says, Dave, you got to come out with something white. He said, these guys just aren't digging the black, especially the acoustic guitar manufacturers. They won't take the black. And so that's sort of, okay. So I started trying to work on a material that'd be white. I started testing materials and combining materials, and I go to an injection mold place and get them to try to run it. And most of the injection mold places, I had my little mold, my bag of material, and they do one run for me, and it was too difficult for them to run. And then I have to find another place. So it's like running around with my mold, my box of material, trying to find somebody to run it. And I finally came up with a material that I liked. I really liked the sound of it, and it was white. And so that got us onto the waking up in the middle of the night, thinking of brand names and stuff. And I came out with Tusk, TUSQ.
Tusk.
Yeah. And that one I did check out to see if I could use it.
Good. Wonderful. What year did Tusk happen for you?
83, probably about 86, 87. I would think somewhere around there. And then I would drive down to the NAMM show every year. Yeah, ever since '83, I'd drive down from Vancouver to Anaheim to the NAMM show, and I have my booth in a box, which was basically my briefcase. I'd walk around for 3 days, trying to show people, these black nuts and then the Tusk and whatnot like that. And then slowly.
Was there a critical customer? What was the first sort of like big, like, wow, that was a big deal sale?
That's a really good question. It was.
Do you remember?
Yeah, I do remember. I do
of course
remember.
You do.
Yeah. It was around 1989, 1990. Both Larrivee and Taylor guitar sets were switching over to Tusk for the nuts and saddles. Wow. And so all those guys that have been calling on years before and them saying no. And all of a sudden they switched over, and then all of a sudden they're, oh, well, let's take another look at this, And that was a big sort of turning point for me personally. For all of a sudden they were using it, and I had a little bit of cash flow, and all the other guys that I've been talking to over the years, all of a sudden they say, well, let's take another look at this, and then some of the guys were also starting to do black nuts, using the self-lubricating nuts, and so it sort of slowly came together. So that was one big point in the Graphite history of both Bob Taylor and John Larrivee switching over to Tusk.
Now I got to ask you, Larrivee was right there in the Vancouver area. Did you have to make that deal at the NAMM show, or did you make that happen in your hometown?
In the hometown, like
you did. Okay.
Yeah. But,
well, I just know lots of people who like. I brought an Australian guitar maker into the Boutique Guitar Showcase in his first year, and that's when he opened up his first Australian dealer in California, not in Australia. And I know lots of other people. Some of your customers. I know that Nick Huber used your product, and that Nick. I don't think the German dealers didn't take him seriously until he was successful in America, and that's a pretty common story. So I was curious to know if Larrivee, if you made that happen in your hometown, or whether you had to go to America to make it happen. Well, John started making electric guitars. That's how it first started with John.
And I had the black nut. And Kramer was, overloaded with making guitars, so they were jobbing it out to different factories. And Larrivee was making guitars for Kramer too. And he needed some nuts, and then he needed some knobs. So I was still selling ESP stuff. So I ordered, black chrome knobs and stuff for some of the guitars he was doing for, I think Paul Dean from Loverboy. And so I kind of knew John more on the black nut side. And then when we came out the Tusk, I'd bring it and he'd try it, and we use bone, and but then he could hear the difference, and Bob Taylor could hear the difference, and so they switched over at the same NAMM show basically, and then that was a big deal for me and for Tusk.
All right, what would you describe them hearing? What is this difference they're hearing?
Well, that's another good question. I knew it sounded better. Like it had this sparkle to it, this ear candy to it, and I didn't know why, but if you dropped it on a hard surface, it sounded like it. I don't have one near me here, but if you dropped it on a hard surface, it sounds like you dropped aluminum on the on the table.
Paul Reed Smith does it in his TED Talk.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So that's what I used to do when I go. I didn't have a booth still at NAMM, and I'd be talking to a guy, and I'd just be having a saddle or a nut, and I'd be just dropping it while I'm talking to him. Hell, give me that. What is that?
Yeah.
And I finally had a distributor in Japan, and Moradera, and Toshio Moradera also started Morris guitars, and Morris guitars were huge in the 60s. Like they're the biggest guitar manufacturer in the world. Big. And then that kind of wound down, but Moradera, the distribution company, was huge. and they took the Morris line and made it into, just luthier, really high-end guitars. And I said, and I was in Japan, and I said, no, you really got to try this Tusk material out on you. That's its saddles. And, no, we're bone guys. And then finally he said, okay, we'll put one guitar with Tusk and one with bone, and let's hear the difference. And they could hear the difference. And they took it, so they took it to the university, they took both guitars to the University of Tokyo. I said, why does this guitar sound so much better than this guitar? And the University of Tokyo came back a month later, and they said, there's more harmonics, so you got your fundamental notes, but then you got your thirds and fifths and octaves. And it's got more harmonic content than the bone has, and that's the difference you're hearing. Then I had a story now too.
Yeah, did you get a copy of their findings? Was it published?
It was published in. They showed me the findings when I was in Japan. They had all these sheets out, and then they published it in their ads, and so that I got their ad material. Then we started doing our own testing too, and now that we knew what we were looking for, so that we had a sort of a bit of more of a story to tell, other than just dropping the nut or saddle on the tabletop and saying that it sounds better. But here's some proof here of why it sounds like it does.
Okay, great. Okay, so Larrivee, Taylor takes it on, a few other people take it on, wonderful. But you've expanded past nuts at this point in time. So you were doing other people's guitar parts. You did your graphite self-lubricating nut. You did the Tusk nut and saddle. You've got some big buy-in. You've got some scientific proof. When did you start introducing things like your electric guitar bridges and your ratio tuners and this type of product? Was that to replace the products that you were importing from ESP, or did that have a different story?
Yeah. My whole thing was to try to. I stopped importing parts and started just focusing on my stuff now. And I found an injection mold company that was kind of, I could rely on wetting the parts because I had to supply Taylor, and they're doing some volume. But I needed more parts. I went. A guy came to my door. Now we're into a 600 square foot little factory where we're assembling stuff and packaging. And this guy out of the blue phoned me, and he worked for worked for Jim Pattison as a marketing guy there. And he said he wanted me to meet the head of the company he's working for now, a marketing company. And so I met him, a real nice guy. And he says, well, you know what? You just got to learn a way to expand your line. You need more product. You got to figure out a way of doing that. So first thing I tried was to make the saddles, Strat saddles out of my material. Yeah. And I also made an acoustic saddle out of the black material. And we played it. It didn't really sound too much different or anything else like that. Then I thought, well, maybe that's black saddle self-lubricated is going to keep you in tune better. And so I sent a set out to. I had a distributor in Australia now, and I sent a set of saddles. I called them turbo saddles, and this is back in the day of telex, so there wasn't a lot of quick communications back and forth. So I sent him a set of saddles. He played guitar, and I'd put the black acoustic saddle on my Larrivee guitar. And one day I was playing my acoustic, and I broke my string, and it broke at the 12th fret. And I go, I've never broken a string at the 12th string. You're always breaking at the sound. And then a month later, the guy in Australia said, Dave, I don't know about staying in tune any better with these Strat saddles. But he says, I always break strings, and I haven't broken a string yet. I've had them on for 2 months. Then I started thinking about my acoustic guitar and breaking a string at the 12th fret, which never happened before. So then in my 300 square foot office, we set up a Strat with a paint mixer and a drill, and we kind of bent it so it looked like a pick, and we put on a steel saddle, a brass saddle, the what ended up being the string saver saddle and one of the stamped metal saddles. And this thing would be going around, you know, answering the phone and it'd go hours and hours. And all of a sudden, bang, just a string broke. We look at it, it'd be like the brass saddle string broke. And so we'd string it up again. And the next day, bang, steel saddle broke. And then we'd mix the order up with the strings. So one was getting, you know, which one's getting plucked first. And we'd go on. We've done it for about a week. And we never broke our string saver saddle.
String saver saddle.
Yeah. And I said, hey, we might have something here. So then I went and talked to a patent lawyer and explained to him what was going on. And they said, well, you know, provide the tests and everything else like that. Well, so we, you know, it's a novel idea, and it's something that's not obvious. If something's obvious, you can't patent it. They said this wasn't obvious. And so then we had string saver saddles. And basically what it is when you have a metal saddle and a metal string, you got a thing called stiction. So it's kind of sticky there. And it's basically like taking a paper clip for a string and wiggle it back and forth. The paper clip's going to break because there's stress on that. There's metal fatigue. And that was what was happening with strings, is lock in, and a burr would even lock it in even stronger. So the stress on that string is on a real specific part of that string. And with string saver saddles, we made a nicer ramp up for the string to leave, and then with the self lubrication, it moved that stress into a greater portion of the string. It wasn't just focused on that one part, and it was just enough to reduce string breakage like 90%. It was a big thing. So then we started coming up with string saver saddles. And then the marketing guy said, "Well, you need to come up with more parts. You got string saver, Strat saddles." And then I thought, how about if we go to that's what big cost for me was molds, and then having companies buy it. So I started going to guitar manufacturers and say, "Look, I'll make a mold for free for you to your specifications, long as I can put it in my catalog to sell to the music stores with the distributors." And then I started getting a lot of manufacturers going, "Yeah, we'll take you up on that deal." I've done some stuff for Gibson and a bunch of other companies. So also my catalog for my retail side, dealers and distributors is growing. I've got this part and that part. That was made for B-Band, and that's made for Larrivee, and that's made for Taylor guitars, and then a Taylor guitar nuts, and then so that was a real big growth opportunity. All of a sudden now I actually had a catalog of parts. So that was a big turning point for being able to expand how many parts that we could do.
Yeah. Great. So why you? Why do you think you're doing this and not some other guy who needed to meet a girl and started a band?
I think the biggest thing is persistence. My first year of sales at Graphite was $18,000, but I thought it was a good idea, and so
1983, $18,000 of mail order something for a guy who started his first company. I mean that's proof of concept. I think.
Next year we're up to $24,000.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's persistent. Really, it is. It's So I was still playing. I played up until about 10 years ago. The last band I was in was because we're having fun. It wasn't for the money type of thing, but we ended up, it was the most successful band that we ever played in, because we played music we liked to play, and we didn't take gigs if we didn't think we were going to go over at that place or whatever else like that. And we ended up getting booked solid. So I was doing Graphite, coaching my daughter's softball teams and playing at night, and it just kept going. And it was I think.
But why are you persistent? Why? Why do you think you're persistent? Because not everyone is. Most people give up, actually. Giving up is the most normal thing to do, isn't it?
I don't know. Not for me. I don't know. I don't.
Come on, you know a lot of quitters, right? And I'm not trying to be a jerk. I just mean that
yeah.
most people will not start a business. They will not take the risk because they won't be persistent. They won't stick with it. They'll cave at one of the first bits of friction they get and say, no, I'm going to go and I'm just going to get a job and do what's normal there. And so that type of persistence and tenacity that you have is not normal. You've been in business long enough that, come on, you can admit that, right? It's not normal.
It's not normal.
No, it's not.
I think I was lucky in that I could play and I could make money. I really haven't really had a job, trying to figure out, puzzles, of trying to make a guitar part sound like what you want it to sound like.
Yes.
Designing stuff and for guitarists, you can't color too far outside of the lines as far as design goes.
Yeah, but luck doesn't explain it all. It explains some of it. It absolutely does. I've been lucky too. Listen, I was a touring musician as well, and I was buying and selling used gear. And at one point in time, a store I'd sold a lot of used gear to asked me to buy the store because the guy was 77 years old and suffering from mania, a literal maniac, and they had a problem. They needed to get out of a lease, and they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. They said, listen, if you get us out of this lease by convincing the landlord to sign it over to you, pay first and last month's rent, I'll sell you the name of the store for $1 and leave all the inventory on consignment.
Good deal.
Because he was literally going insane, right? And that is a lucky moment. But you know what? They had made that offer to a few people who said no. But I didn't say no. I was lucky I got that offer. Most people never get that offer. But it's that luck combining with you're going to do something about it. You're going to take that risk. You're going to try that thing that most people would say, I don't know how to do that. I've never run a business. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to. No. Sorry, can't do it. Someone else. Find someone else. That's the most normal thing that could possibly have happened. And you didn't do that. And I want to know why.
Yeah. I have to get deep into psychology. And I can't remember his name now. He worked for KMC. KMC was the distribution company in the U.S.
Yeah, Command.
Command. I can't remember his name, but he was talking to my daughter years later, and he says, I got to hand it to your dad. He says, your dad would come to the NAMM show with his little briefcase there, and he'd say, want to talk? He said, oh, well, just a second, man. I got to talk to somebody. And he said he would stand there for half an hour, and finally, I talked to other sales guys. Is he still there? And okay, I'll have to go talk to him. And so he's telling my daughter this like years later. He says, like, your dad was always there, always waiting to talk to me. And I was trying to brush him off. Finally, I have to talk to him. Still didn't buy anything from him. But he said next year he's there again. And he's there again the next year. So it was a lot of persistence for sure.
Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop is your premier fretted instrument custom case maker, and we invite you to create a musical instrument case unlike any other, one that's unique to you. Every Cedar Creek custom case is hand-built by highly skilled craftspeople using only select woods, Providence Forge hardware, and premium instrument-friendly materials. At Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop, we are dedicated to helping you design the case of your dreams. Find out more at cedarcreekcases.com. This space is normally reserved for brands who make stories like this possible, like the Dario and the Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop. If your company belongs in this conversation, let's talk. We partner with brands who value craft, culture, and the quiet power of a well-placed idea. So, you would just stick. You would just show up and show up and show up. And, that's the biggest thing about. So I heard a psychologist recently talk about why salespeople are paid disproportionately for the work they do. And it's that right there. It's the ability to take rejection and show up again. They clearly weren't giving you the attention you needed, but you stood there and you were going to wait for it.
Yeah.
And then you met them. Great. It didn't happen that moment. You didn't say, oh, NAMM sucked. I didn't make it happen. I'm going home. I'm going to do something else. You showed up the next year and you did it again. and you did it again, and you made small victories, and sometimes you made big victories. But those big victories usually come because you made a bunch of small victories at some point in time,
Yeah, or
and
you
that you
met
stuck
somebody.
around.
Yeah, and you met somebody,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, it wasn't the opportunity for them to switch over to something we had, but um, uh, Jim DeCola, who works for Gibson Guitars, is their
Yep.
head designer. He used to work at PV and
Yep.
started dealing. PV started using string saver saddles on stuff. Then Jim moved
Mm-hmm.
over to Fender and introduced me to Fender.
Yeah.
And then he moved over to
He
Gibson.
designed the Wolfgang, didn't he?
Yeah,
Jim, didn't
yeah,
he work with Eddie Van Halen that guitar?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Him and
yeah.
him and I shared a drink at Anaheim after a NAMM show one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
One of the nicest guys in the music business.
it's very kind. So,
Yeah.
so he left PV and he went over to Gibson. What
Well,
happened?
he went
for you
over.
then?
He went over to Fender first, and then
Yeah.
from Fender, and then he went over to Gibson. And at
Yes.
Gibson, he introduced Gibson to Tusk, and now all we do a lot of stuff for Gibson electrics and for acoustics too. We do their nuts and saddles and bridge pins
Mhm.
for Gibson acoustics. That led
Mhm.
over into the Epiphones into China, then started selling stuff into China. Usually
Mhm.
the brand owner, like Epiphone, they'd get their stuff. They'd say, "Hey, you got to use Dave's stuff on our guitars." So they
Right.
reluctantly, brought it into China, but
Mhm.
we started doing stuff for Fender on their acoustics, and go into China for their Chinese acoustics, and so started getting a bigger footprint into China and supplying the factories into there. And then some of those factories split off and moved over to Indonesia. But while I was there in China, I'd start meeting people, and I'd meet a guy there.
Mhm.
A friend of mine invited me to a golf weekend, and it was a bunch of guitar manufacturers at this golf weekend that I'd never met before. And
Mhm.
so I got to meet them, and then I was at a trade show in Shanghai and met them again. And then the next time I was in Shanghai, Dave, what do you do? Oh, I make your guitar. Blah, 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 blah. The next year, well, 4 years later, well, let me try some stuff on our ukuleles, some Mahalo ukuleles, and then we started
Mhm.
making ukulele parts from Mahalo, and the
Yep.
volume of ukuleles, for so many years, it's just been
Oh
going
yeah.
up and up and up and up. So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
started, met a guy 4 years ago and met him again, and then slowly built a relationship up, and then we started
Yeah.
trying our stuff, and so all these things combine and compound.
Yes. It's exactly how it works. I don't know if you're aware of this, but I'm retained by NAMM. I've been a consultant for NAMM for the last decade, basically. And people ask me about the NAMM short. They say they came and they didn't sell something or whatever. I'm like, or a bigger company who says, I don't think we need to keep doing that. People buy online now. I'm like, are you nuts? Just look at your staff. Where did you meet them? Where did you find your staff? And what were they doing 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago? Yeah, the current SEO, the SEO, the current chief sales officer of D'Addario, used to sell me his acoustic guitars,
Chris.
and then he worked for American Music and Sound. Yeah, Chris Griffith, and now he's at D'Addario,
Yeah.
and Brian, who handles the string division and such, used to work for Gibson, and so on and so forth, and it's just, you don't make a show on that moment. Your career is made by meeting all of these people over a very long arc of time. And the idea that you don't need to show up anymore, I think, is insane, because I can clearly identify all the points in my business. I have never gone to a major music gathering. I mean, like a NAMM show or a music messa, something like this, where there's a lot of people. Man, you put 100,000 people who are in the industry together, I'm going to get some business done.
Yeah.
Like, it's if you don't get something done, it's not the show, man. It's, there's an opportunity there.
Or ideas too, like just talking to a
Yes.
guy, and all of a sudden just oh, that was something I was working on 20 years ago, but if you twisted it around this way, then all of a sudden now it's
Yes.
kind of making sense, like which is how we
Yeah.
came up with ratio machine heads.
Mhm.
Back in the early 90s, I was again trying to come up with more parts. I was trying to build this, every guitar inventor invents a tremolo. So
Yes,
I was
yes.
trying to invent a tremolo. And, back then, I couldn't afford machines, so I used to make them out of balsa wood, and then I have a little saw and I'd be cutting and make all these little tremolos out of balsa wood. And I wanted this tremolo to be able to lock it down and go into open tuning, or unlock it and use it as a tremolo, or pull it up and lock it and go into another open tuning. And it was really hard to do because all the strings had to move different amounts to change pitch.
Yeah.
Like the G string, you barely had to move and it went up a whole tone. The high E string, you had to move a whole bunch to get up to a whole tone. Then I started thinking, oh, that's why my G string goes out of tune so much, because it just has to change a little bit of the tension on the string, and it amplifies it 3 times the high E string. And I thought, well, that'd be a good idea for machine heads, because when I go to tune my G string on my guitar, I have to slow down. So you don't want to overshoot it. So, and trying to do that on stage is really difficult. This when you're playing, you have to slow down and try not to overshoot the. I said, that'd be a good idea for machine heads. And so I think about that. Then about 15 years later at Graphite, we finally had another guy in R&D with me, and I said, why don't we work out the ratios of what strings would be? If they all moved up and down the same, what are the gear ratios? And so we started working on that and using different gear ratios. And we finally said, well, why don't we do it so one turn on any string, on any knob, is going to be one tone on every string. So then we went with that theory. And then we worked out the gear ratios. And it's anywhere from 12 to 1 to 39 to 1 gear ratios. And we thought, hey, this is great. What a great way to get to open tunes. One turn down, you're down to a drop D. And so we got some samples made of 39 to 1 gear ratios and put them all together. It worked pretty good for a little while. Then the 39 to 1 gear would break, such fine teeth. And so we were at a standstill. And it's just like, and then I heard about double envelope gears. And double envelope gears is the worm is not straight; it's kind of curved like this, like this. So it wraps around the round gear this way, and then the round gear is scooped out this way, so it wraps around the worm this way. So we made the gear out of hardened steel, and then did a double envelope gear for all the high ratio stuff, like 35 to 1, 39 to 1. We have a 65 to 1 gear ratio for a low B on a Fender style bass on a 5-string. And those gears are stronger than a normal gear, so you hit a roadblock, then you got to think how you're going to get around that. And then we finally came up with a double envelope gearing system. And we found probably the one manufacturer in the world that could do that, doing a double gear envelope, and they started doing that for us, and so the ratio lines, starting to take off now.
We definitely have guitars with ratio tuners on this Boutique Guitar Showcase tour that we start next week, for sure. And the innovative guitar makers are very interested in this idea.
Right,
for sure.
Well, it makes sense, but that was something I was working on like 20 years before, trying to do my first tremolo, but then realizing the issues of how I was doing that and how strings moved and stuff. And it's all to do with not the string diameter, but the core diameter. So like a wound G string is basically a high E string inside there. So it's insensitive to tension adjustments. So a wound G string has a 14 to 1 gear ratio. A plain G string has a 35 to 1 gear ratio. So they all move up and down. So it's
amazing. Yeah, and that's been exacerbated because we have, during that time, we've also gone to multi-scale is much more prolific, and extended range instruments are much more prolific. And so the difference, again, from one string to the next has been exacerbated across even a further playing field, if you will, which I'm sure you're very well aware of. So have you kept your ratios in step with the evolution of guitar that way?
Well, so far on guitar side, bass, we haven't gone too deep into the bass side, but on guitar side, on the Fad Fred or the multi-scale, the core size and everything still relates well to the gear ratios we have for a 6 and a 7 string guitar. So we haven't had to retool on that, but bass is going to be the next thing that we're looking at to see how much of a difference, or if there's going to be a difference,
I'm sure I have multi-scale bass. It's 34 to 37 inch scale from Mayonnaise Guitars out of Poland.
Oh yeah,
Mayonnaise Guitars and Basses.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you do, because we did the photo shoot and they show up in the photographs, and so they have a 5-string bass multi-scale that definitely has your tuners on it.
Right.
And I don't remember exactly which other instruments we have, but I know there's more than one guitar maker that we have on our tour coming up that has your ratio tuners on them. It's harder to identify without being intentional about whether or not they have your nuts or your saddles on an acoustic guitar, especially if they're Tusk. You'd have to actually stop to take a closer look. But the ratio tuners, because of the way you've branded them, they're identified quickly.
Right. So where's your tour start?
Our tour starts in St. Louis, Missouri. I don't think this podcast will be out by the time it starts, to be honest. I think that I don't know when the release of this one is, but it starts on September 11th in St. Louis, Missouri, and does, 12 to 14 stops across the U.S. And so we'll do St. Louis and Denver, L.A., San Diego, and then back up through the desert and across Texas and the South all the way up to New York and Chicago and sort of all over. And then we'll hit we'll hit Europe in the springtime. We do about 25 cities over a dozen countries and sometimes 3 continents in a per year in a tour season. And so
it's a pretty serious logistics going on there.
Yeah, it's serious logistics for sure, but we've got great partners. We don't rent venues or anything in the store. We go to high-end guitar shops that sell high-end guitars every single day. So on our tours, the guitars average about $10,000 a guitar, which is definitely on the higher end of the guitar marketplace. And we'll have guitars that sometimes get up into the $70,000 to $80,000 range. And so, you can't take a guitar like that into just any guitar store. You have to take it to the places that do sell instruments like that. We go to Chicago Music Exchange, we go to Eddie's Guitars and Righteous Guitars and these types of places that that service high-end customers all the time. And so, and the nice thing about that is that, those customers are looking for quality. They're looking for innovation. They want to know the narrative. They want to know why this is what it is. What's the story behind this design? What's the story behind the material usage? And, well, that looks unusual. Why are they doing it that way? An event that we do is, it's an experiential guitar event. You get to pick up these unusual and rare instruments. A lot of the guitars we have are lead times of 2 to 6 years. So you wait for these guitars if you order one, but you get a chance to get your hands on one at one of our events and play it. And so you can experience them for yourself. But we very commonly get people responding afterwards saying, I knew I was going to come and see some really cool guitars. I didn't know I was going to get a lesson in Greek philosophy and go home and go down the internet hole of, the Aristotelian philosophy of eudaimonia or something of the sort. But when somebody's a conceptual thinker and they're making a guitar based on exploration of a particular idea, these are the ideas that lead to very remarkable instruments or conceptual instruments. And so we end up telling these stories, and then somebody goes home and, as I said, sort of goes down a philosophical rabbit hole and sends us an email afterwards. Like, wow, you changed my life somehow, and I thought I was just going to go see a cool guitar, So I always want to know why, for me to, I never liked the because answer, or you're going to do it because I said so kind of answer as a kid. I still don't like it now. I want to understand it. And when I understand it, I'm all in, and I'll be one of your biggest advocates, but it's got to make sense. And so we don't have, trick guitars out with us. If there's a guitar that looks unusual, it's unusual for a reason, typically. Every once in a while, it's the exploitation of an icon. And that's okay. Yeah. There's a certain amount of, Bootsy Collins' big sparkly star sunglasses that we get it, They're funky. That's great. We're excited to see that happen, but that still has a cultural relevance to it. The guitar is an icon of our culture, and
Right.
and it gets placed in ads all over the place that have nothing to do with guitars because it signifies something about the person that's supposed to be in this image,
Right, right.
right?
Well, that's sort of
So,
our philosophy on product development too. Is we don't make a product because headphones are popular right now. We're going to do Graphite headphones, but
mhm.
our stuff has to have a hook. There's got to be a reason for it. Like we aren't going to do a guitar bridge just to make a guitar bridge because we can sell more guitar bridges. There's got to be a reason behind that. Like on our Resomax bridges, like back in
Yeah.
the back in the 50s, all the Les Pauls had aluminum bridges on it,
Hmm.
and everybody talks about 50s Les Pauls and how good they sounded, um, and it was the wood and the craftsmanship. But right around 1960 is when zinc came out onto the market for
Hmm.
making it took over every industry. So doorknobs, latches, and they
Yeah.
started making guitar bridges out of zinc because the molds were half the price. It lasted 20 times as long as a aluminum mold, and zinc
Hmm.
is way easier to plate. So it was just
Yeah.
like overnight, everything changed to zinc. And but they that was such a critical
But
point of
it is not
this.
structurally the same, though.
Yeah,
It is
yeah, it
very
doesn't.
different.
Yeah, totally doesn't sound the same. So we
Yeah.
started working on bridges and on aluminum. And the one thing with the old Les Pauls is eventually the bridges go flat because they weren't quite strong enough. So we
Hmm.
compounded a few materials into the aluminum to make them stronger, um, and get that. Tone's all about harmonics. So
Hmm.
again, those bridges have more harmonics, and then we made a real nice design. We came up with some other cute little things, using magnets to keep the bridges locked onto the tail pieces and whatnot. But
Hmm.
the material was it had to have the sound. It had to have that harmonic. So there's a reason to do that, and then we can
Hmm.
spice it up with some sexy curves and stuff like that. Incredible thinking of a guitar bridge, that deep of how you're designing it. But yeah, every product that we do is like if it's just going to be another Me Too product, or even if we're going to get sales from it, I don't want to do that. I want to do something that's there's a reason for it, and
Hmm.
and we got to try to get that word out and explain better and better to customers of
Hmm. Hmm.
why this is this and why ratio is ratio and why Resomax is Resomax and
Yeah.
why string saver is string saver and yeah. So
Okay, so why not? You said it as if it was self-evident that you don't want to just put your name on things, that you want to build it with a purpose, but that is absolutely making your life more complicated. Maybe you could sell some things by putting your name on it and working your distribution level. And so,
mm,
are you just you like to throw roadblocks in your own way, or justify that for me? Tell me why you won't do that.
why do we all do that? It's hard to, marketing is it's easy to go into a marketplace where somebody isn't, get your own little island and start building it there as opposed to trying to, you know, come up with just guitar strings that are just guitar strings and you're going to take on the Dario. I don't think so. Like
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
not going to happen. So, it's, let's say, hit your enemies at his weakest point or whatever else like that. I don't think that quite that bloodthirsty there, but I like to we came out with picks, the Tusk picks. We always had customers saying you got to make a Tusk pick. I go,
Yeah.
well, I don't want to do picks. Jim Dunlop's got picks sewing up.
Hmm.
And then one day we had a little bit of time, and so we made a one cavity pick mold. I'll make it. I'll just see what it sounds like. And it came out, and it was thin, but it was stiff, and then it had that Tusk dull tinkle, and that reminded me when I worked at the music store, doing the Schecter bills and whatnot. A
Hmm.
sales rep came in. This is when tortoiseshell was legal or whatever else. He gave me a
Yes.
tortoiseshell
Yes.
pick. Give me a tortoiseshell
Yep.
pick, and it was thin and stiff. And when I drop it, it kind of sounded like this Tusk pick. And I go,
Mm.
I had my tortoiseshell pick for about a month till I lost it. But,
Yeah.
so like, 30 years later, all of a sudden I hear that sound and that feel again. I say, oh, wow, we got something here. And then we expanded that to, we had the Tusk tone, then we came up with a warm tone and a deep tone. So we got 3 tones now of the picks, and then we came up with 3 shapes and 3 gauges. So it's sort of a 3x3 type of thing. But there's a reason for the pick. It was weren't going to do picks to make picks, but we had to, like, this was that really got me excited, was the Tusk pick. And a lot of guys on YouTube will do demos, and you can really hear the difference on like an acoustic guitar. There's some guys that done some really good Tusk versus another pick demos. You can hear it.
A pick makes a huge difference, and I don't know why it's not talked about more. A pick is one of those things where people kind of get their pick, because, you know, it is an extension of yourself. I get that, how you get used to a particular response, and therefore you don't really think about the pick. You think about how you're playing the guitar. But, you know, I had an experience back when I had a retail store where a customer had narrowed down the 2 acoustic guitars that were their favorites, but they couldn't decide between the 2 acoustics, and they were really kind of getting beat up on this thing. And I was like, oh, I need to help this guy find a solution, or else he's just going to leave frustrated in a second, you know. And so I looked at him. I said, "What pick are you using?" And he showed me. I pulled a pick out of my pocket. I said, "No, this pick, that guitar." Picked up the guitar, that pick, and went, "Oh my God, yeah." Picks do make a difference. Strings do make a difference. Yep. And so just using the same pick on every single guitar for everything you do, you're missing so many opportunities, sonic possibilities. You're missing response possibilities. It makes you play differently. Yeah. You know, that acoustic sound that you hear in the 1960s, you know, where it's almost all string. It's because everyone was using these super floppy picks, you know, on these things. And it's all string and pick. You know, there's almost no body sound to the guitar. And, you know, but when you get to a bluegrasser, you know, they've got this big, heavy pick and there's high action with those D18s. And you can't get that out of a thin pick. Right. It's a different response, and it's a different play style. You also can't be as fast and articulate with that floppy little pick that you're using either for what they're trying to do, you know, because they're playing up against, you know, high tension banjo players and you know, resophonic dobro players, you know, and mandolin players. They need all those instruments. You know, bluegrass is kind of a product of no sustain. The F5 mandolin had no sustain. The banjo has no sustain, and so you get this really. If you want to hold a note longer, you just have to hit like 16th notes or 32nd notes with the right hand. There's no sustaining that mandolin, not an F5. A bowlback mandolin has some sustain, but not an F5. And so the sound of Bill Monroe is the sound of an inefficient mandolin that had a lot of attack, and then he created this concept of chop chords and created this rhythm sort of sound, because it's not a violin, man. It's the opposite of a violin. You know, well, I guess the banjo is probably the opposite of the violin, but the mandolin's a close second for sustain. And so, you know, but you can get those effects with a pick, you know, and yes, your bridge makes a difference, and yes, your strings make a difference, and all these things. And I just, I don't know. I love to experiment. You know, the thing I'm looking forward to the most is the thing I haven't done yet. You know, I'm not someone who returns to the same thing over and over again. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do. As a matter of fact, it's Friday night, and I will be having a filet with butter and sage and a bottle of Amarone with my wife tonight, because we love that Friday night tradition. So it's not like I never repeat myself. However, novelty, new stimulation, something that causes me to see the world in a way that I've never considered it before, you know, and something that inspires me to make music in a way I've never made it before. I mean, that's exciting. I love that. And that can happen with something as simple as a pick.
Right. I remember when I was in my early learning years of playing guitar, I think it was about 16. I'd take lessons one time for one lesson, and the guy was reading out of Alfred's book, and I quit. Yeah. And then we started the band, and so I ended up having a great teacher, and he just taught me songs that I wanted to learn, and you know, the blues scale and stuff like that. So you're kind of, picking away and, trying to bend notes and whatnot. Like, and I was listening to Johnny Winter's 8-track in my living room, and I had my guitar there, and all of a sudden I was picking and and all of a sudden it just happened. I turned my pick at a little bit of a slant, and all of a sudden I'm playing fast, and it was just like, wow, it was just like that, it was just like, wow, went back the next day to my band and practicing, it was like, how are you doing that, it's just the way I was holding my pick, and it's just like, it was a big breakthrough.
Yeah. That's exactly it, man. And just little angles, those subtle little nuances, they make a big difference, because the guitar is this mechanical interface that is so expressive that subtle changes, subtle movements, that's the reason that the Les Paul bridge that they first came out with on the gold top in 52, 53, was it?
Yeah.
That had this big clunky piece of metal on top. Like, you couldn't palm mute on it. You couldn't dampen the strings with your hand. Like, get this thing out of the way. What is that? You just cut back my expression by 30% or something, because you have to be able to interact with it. And, the first thing that matters about making music on a guitar is you. It's your fingers, it's your approach, and then the next thing is, how did you hit the string? Did you hit it with a pick, with a finger pad, with your fingernail, with at
an angle, at flat, or
an angle, straight on? Did you get under it? I've never been able to stick with a guitar that has a middle pickup in it. I always had to pull them out because I dig in that space, and they were always in my way. Like, get that thing out of here. I'd pull it out. But that's just because of the way that I play guitar, and there's lots of great guitar players out there that have middle pickups that are fantastic. So don't get me wrong. I'm certainly not against the middle pickup, but, it's a negotiation between you and the guitar, not just the guitar, not just the player. And so,
well, Eddie said it all, and it's all in the hands. And it is. It's, I used to, we'd go, a whole bunch of golf buddies would go out, about 40 of us would go into the Kelowna, played 5 days of golf, and a bunch of guys played guitar too. And there's one guy there, he spent so much money on his equipment all the time. And he got the Caesars, did all these mods on a Fender Twin, and then he got geranium transistors in his wah-wah pedal, blah, 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 blah. But like he played like, and then I just brought a transistor trainer amplifier in my guitar, and it sounded great. And he'd go, how are you getting that sound? And then he tried, and he'd sound like him, so you can force the sound out with your hands and stuff, even depending on what equipment. But you'll give Eddie Van Halen a shitty little amp and a shitty guitar, he'll get something out of it,
As a guitar builder and a player, you have a sense for when something's working right. That's why so many of the world's best trust D'Addario. Unmatched tone, perfect intonation, and strings made to the tightest tolerances in the industry. That reputation is no accident. It's the result of 400 years of being obsessed with quality and innovation. D'Addario. When you know, you know.
This space is normally reserved for brands who make stories like this possible, like D'Addario and the Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop. If your company belongs in this conversation, let's talk. We partner with brands who value craft, culture, and the quiet power of a well-placed idea.
Absolutely. I mean, within reason. He still tweaked the shit out of his gear. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure we'd have Super Strats the way that we had them if it wasn't for Eddie's Frankenstein.
For sure.
But,
for sure.
But the point is, he could make something. There was that movie that came out a number of years ago called This Might Get Loud, with Jack White, Jimmy Page, and The Edge sort of all together.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a moment at the beginning, I think, where Jack White's like, I don't know, out somewhere on a porch, and he literally takes a 2x4 and a wire and a screw and puts some tension on the wire, and then puts a magnetic pickup underneath it and plays Slide on this one string 2x4, and I swear it's the best sounding fucking thing in the whole movie. And there were a lot of expensive guitars played by a lot of big guitar legends.
Yeah.
But the coolest thing to me was that 2x4 with the screw and the string. And but that also probably had something to do with, whatever Jack did with it. Because that guy's mojo. I mean, is he a good guitar player? I think he's a good guitar player, but he's certainly like 90% mojo, 10% technique.
right.
I think.
Yeah.
Maybe someone's going to be mad at me for that, but I think he is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the beauty of rock music.
Yeah. And playing guitar is like, there's the guitar itself is like baking a cake. Guys put this ingredient and that ingredient and that ingredient, and you end up with that kind of cake. But then there's the other part of it of the guy actually playing it. Pick the hands and how you bend the notes, and it's just so it's a pretty cool instrument.
Yeah. All right, Dave. So you've noodled around and fussed with all of the different aspects of the guitar. Really, probably looked into the nuances of the pieces more than most. And so what do you think is the most underestimated piece of a guitar?
Underestimated? Well, there's a whole bunch of, string sticking up the nut. That's if you're going out on a tune all the time, could be a major part of it. And I think the other thing, especially on acoustic guitars, is the saddle, because the saddle's kind of the great decider. It decides what frequencies leave the string and how fast they leave the string and go into the guitar body. So if it's called impedance. So if you had a perfectly matched impedance of the saddle to the guitar body, all the string's energy is going to go out into the guitar body right away. So you have a big loud blap, and it's going to be like a mandolin or something, let's say, loud. And if you start mismatching in the impedance, it's going to leave string vibration, leave such certain frequencies in the string and certain frequencies going into the guitar body. So there's no free ride here. It's not like it's going to sustain forever and sound great, blah, 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 blah. You get something that's sustained forever, the string sustaining, but there's a lot less energy leaving that string to go into the guitar body, so it's not going to be as loud. So, there's all types of trade-offs. So the saddle is definitely all acoustic guitar makes up. Night and day difference. Different materials that you put into that, and then stuff as far as for our stuff, it's the Tusk is consistent too. So it's consistent from piece to piece, but it's consistent within each piece. So bone and it's. So was a living animal, so it's grains and there's hard spots.
Yeah,
and soft
it's
spots
porous.
And, yeah. And it's there's you can have a dead string and you get a good piece of bone too, but you can also get bone that have one dead string, or try to balance other saddle pickup with bone saddles. A lot harder to do. And then go to the next piece of bone and it's totally different. So
So. Are there videos out there where someone can see someone's swapped out saddles like
there's
that?
There's lots of guys out on the internet.
Well, I've never come across that.
Yeah,
Something I should look into.
Yeah.
I'll look it up and realize there's 100,000 results. Oh shit! How did I miss this?
I remember years ago when I was working at the music store. I can't remember, it was like an Area or Washburn came out with an acoustic guitar with a brass saddle. And it was just like, it did sound good, but it was just amazing how dramatic the change in tone is. Put a brass saddle in there. Like I didn't like the sound at all. It was real, just all top end. What was I going to say about that? Oh, I was my Larrivee guitar. And when I was, this was way back when I was still selling ESP parts, and the store went bankrupt. And so he offered to give me a Larrivee guitar for one of the old guitar parts. So I got the Larrivee guitar. So one of the ones he made, Victoria. And so I had the bone nut and saddle. So a couple of years later, came out with that was my test guitar for the Tusk. And the difference was just like dramatic, but I didn't know why. We'll finally find out from
Yeah.
Japan. But and it just had all this sparkly ear candy, that you just like, just yeah,
Yeah.
big
If you like sparkly ear candy, I mean, I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
important. So,
Yeah.
you know, I've come to not think about sound as fundamentally good or bad unless we specify an objective. It is better or worse at obtaining a particular objective, but there's no one sound that's better or worse than
Oh
the
yeah,
other. It depends on what you're trying to do. And
totally agree.
and the
It's a-
guitar is a complicated system, and so as you said, there's a trade-off sort of. So if you need more high-end sparkle or more high-end sort of harmonic response, then that might be a good way to add it. But if you're someone who likes the sound of dead strings and something a little more plunky, it might be working against you in that
Right.
scenario.
Yeah,
right?
like tone is like arguing strawberry and chocolate ice cream.
Yeah.
The guys go, chocolate's the best ice cream. Now the guys
Right.
go, strawberry's the best ice cream. It's just
Yes.
like it's just different flavors. Different flavors of everything they add and subtract from your guitar. It's like there is no perfect. There is no one ice cream flavor that's the best. That's why there's so many ice cream flavors. So yeah, that's when I'm talking tone with customers and stuff, it's not a cut and dried thing. It's just like guys arguing bone against Tusk and stuff like that. You're arguing strawberry and chocolate. That guy likes chocolate, that guy likes strawberry. And there's no reason to not let them both like their flavor of ice cream.
Yeah. And again, but I still like to understand it. I still like to know what choices I have, and then how to employ them at a particular moment,
Right.
And I find that people, today we released one of our newsletters, and I wrote a newsletter about Provocation, because when both at the NAMM show and when we're on tour, I always have a few art pieces with us that cause people to see the guitar in a different way. And I don't know that you've been in the Boutique Guitar Showcase at the NAMM show, but I suspect you may have. That big black area with the art pieces on the outside and such. Those pieces are there intentionally to provoke you. And I don't mean to make you angry, but I mean they're meant to cause you to stop, and you have to reconsider your assumptions, because people arrive with an idea of what a guitar is, and they have their presumptions. And what I want to do is I want to sort of give you a palate cleanser, in the same way where, before a good meal, the restaurateur will often send you a little something at no charge to your table, because they want to set up your palate to receive the meal you're paying for in a good way. Right. Mm-hmm. And so they're going to cleanse your palate with a nice little, they sent us something free. That's nice. Yeah. They're making sure that the rest of this is going to be awesome. And so we have this sculpture from Robert Robinson in Chicago, a guitar-based sculpture, which is riffing on this African tribal fetish, where you would have this sort of wooden mask, and you would take a nail or a spike, and you would drive a spike or a nail into the deity to wake it up so it would protect you. So this is how you awaken the god. And he did this with a guitar, and this guitar has 3 pounds of nails in the fretboard and headstock, and and wooden splints that are driven into it, and the strings sort of busted off, and it's really provocative. And it will be at the front of the event when you walk into the Boutique Guitar Showcase, and it is meant to provoke you. It openly calls the guitar a fetish. Is it a fetish? I don't think it's a fetish. Am I okay with it being a fetish? I don't know. And before you go and see the rest of the guitars, and it's something that I think is really necessary for us. I find it really helpful for me to stop and consider my assumptions on something, and then to sort of say, is that right? Should I assume that? what am I doing? What am I limiting myself from? Why have I done that?
Yeah.
Have I done that because it creates a good foundation for me to then do this task or this work? Or have I arrived here because of some presumption which is irrelevant that I should get rid of? Am I going to conserve it or liberate myself from it? And if I'm going to conserve it, it means I've thought about it well. And I say, okay, this is worth conserving, because I'm not just openly liberating either, because if you just openly liberate, you move towards chaos, and I'm not chaotic, but I want to not be restrained by unnecessary or unreasonable thoughts. I'm a rational person. And so, these are useful thoughts for designers, for people like you who create new products. It's like, why do we do it this way? Is it a good way? Did we think this through? Is it just because manufacturing, someone came by and said, hey, if you switch to zinc, you're going to save, $3 per bridge, and you make this amount of guitars, and so I'm going to put another $1.5 million back into the coffers because you did this? Was that a well-considered idea? And yeah, challenging the assumptions is a big part of what we do. And I suspect that you do it also. I'm not so sure that you're very conscious of why you're doing it, but you're certainly doing it. And so I keep asking you why you do things. You're like, I don't know. No one asked me that. Stop that.
But like seeing like a guitar that's way on the outside too. Maybe you don't go there, but it takes you down another road at the same time, where if you didn't see it, or you didn't get to play it, or you didn't design something for it, you would have gone down that road. Like it was my balsa wood tremolo, working on that, and then it ends up into ratio machine heads. It's so you gotta open your eyes and look and try stuff, and even if it's not something that's your cup of tea, it might lead you something that is your cup of tea. So
yes, it's really important skill to learn. Actually, what you're doing is you're being curious and you're exploring it, and curiosity and exploration is regulated by the same part of the brain that regulates anxiety. And so actually a very curious person who's open to explore things probably has very low anxiety. And when someone's very anxious, what does a good friend do? They say, hey, what's the worst that could happen? And then you encourage them to be curious about it, and then you explore it together and say, okay, well, if this happens, what do you think's going to happen? And try this and that and that. Oh, well, that's not so bad. Or, oh shit, you're right, you shouldn't do that. But it's okay. But the anxiety goes away because you arrive at some sort of reasonable conclusion because you explored it. So you explored it in balsa wood and said, I don't know how to make this work, but it did open up my thinking towards something else that did result in something. And so you have to have this openness to go down a road and say, it's okay if this doesn't work.
Right.
It's actually good to make it fail.
Yeah. I relate a lot to, it's like a detective novel a lot of times. You go down this alley and all of a sudden it's a dead end. And so then you're trying another way to get out. But all of a sudden that dead end you went down there, was all of a sudden there was some information there that helps you go down this other hallway and open that door all of a sudden. It's a pretty interesting it's a pretty interesting life, in general, not even in guitar design, but being able to try new things, and it's not really failing, it's learning. You learn something.
Well, I mean, I think that it's attributed to Nelson Mandela. I think it's true. There's a great quote that says, I never lose. I either win or I learn.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
I like that.
I didn't lose by trying that. I either did it, like, hey, that's a good idea, or I learned something.
Yeah.
Great. Next.
Yeah. If you win too easy, you don't learn very much of anything. Like, if my first product just took off, it was a worldwide success, there wouldn't be the products that I have now. We've got like a lot of patents and trademarks around the world. I think just over 70. So there's a lot of failure. We've got so many products that we've never come out with that I think are really cool, but there might be
and there's some patent lawyer that loves you.
Oh.
It's very wealthy. Thanks.
I've stuck with him. He's not a guitar player, but I've stuck with him for probably 30 years, and because he knows how I think now, and he understands guitar now. Like I can sort of describe to him, this is what I'm thinking, and he gets it right away. And it's like you get somebody on the same wavelength as me is great. So he's my guy, and he doesn't play guitar, but he understands all the how I'm thinking about this.
You don't need him thinking about guitars. You need him thinking about patents. Don't distract him with the guitars. Yeah, wonderful. Well, Dave, it's been great getting to know you and having you on the show. As we're thinking about moving towards wrapping up, I like to always throw it back to our customers. That's the wrong answer. Jamie's very customer focused, Yeah, full disclosure to anyone listening to the podcast, Dave and I have never done business before. I'm not getting any money from Dave. Yeah, he's not a customer so far anyways. Oh, I'm sure I've sold a lot of things with your product on it over my lifetime, for sure. And I've definitely come in contact with a lot of your product, but we've never directly done any commerce. But was there a topic that you were hoping to discuss today, or something you've thought of since we've been in this conversation that you'd like to talk about before we wrap this up?
I'd love to talk about a whole bunch of the stuff that we're working on right now that we don't have patents filed for yet. But I'm just trying to be conscious of not talking about those things. No, we're working on some pretty exciting concepts for gearing for guitars, and we came up with a ukulele tuner that uses a cycloidal type tuner, which is really a really cool way of.
What do you mean cycloidal tuner?
Well, I don't have a picture, a sample here, but basically it's kind of a round gear and another round gear that fits inside, and it kind of goes around like this as it turns around and it moves the post. So we can make them out of polymers, or you can make out of metal, and we can go anywhere from 4-to-1 gear ratio up to like 100-to-1 gear ratio, just by how we can mix and match these gears up, and it's small, so it kind of looks like a planetary gear, but it works on a totally different principle. It's a cool little thing. So we're going to be pushing that. We got our patents on that one. But
does it make tuning an ukulele any less frustrating?
Yeah, because the ukulele is a short scale.
Yeah,
and you're putting on a guitar machine that has 18-to-1 gear ratio, so you got to turn it a lot. And then we figured out the ideal gear ratio for a ukulele is 6-to-1 gear ratio. So we designed a 6-to-1, and it feels like you're tuning a guitar now. It responds the same as you're tuning the guitar. So it's
great. Yeah. As a guitar player tuning up an ukulele, it's like, oh my God, this is never ending. And when you put fresh strings on a ukulele, they stretch and stretch and stretch. Like, oh man, it's a totally different experience. Yeah.
And these ones we can make for the ukuleles. We can do them on oval polymer, so it's really lightweight, so you don't have that big imbalance of that headstock of set of guitar machine heads on the end of a ukulele, so it's balanced again.
Wonderful.
There's so many things.
Well, I'd love to learn more about the gears and the ratios. That's interesting. We should do a deeper dive on that someday. You and I probably not bore people on a podcast about it specifically, but I'd love to get into that conversation a little bit more. And so, Dave, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you've got a busy life, and it's been wonderful. For those who are listening, Dave and I are going to talk for another 2 or 3 minutes on the business of guitar. We do put the business of guitar behind a paywall on our Patreon at patreon.com/business of guitar. And that's patreon.com/business of guitar. We do that not because we're trying to get your money, but frankly, because we need to keep some people out so that we can talk more openly about the business side of things. So if you're in the guitar business, it's worth paying a little bit to access it. If you're not in the guitar business, don't bother. But Dave's been in business for decades and has a really interesting set of experiences dealing with people all around the world. And so I'm looking forward to having that conversation. So if you're in the guitar business, head on over there to patreon.com/business guitar. For the rest of you, we're going to say goodbye now. And Dave, thank you again for being on Life with Strings Attached.
Oh, that's great.
We appreciate
it. Great. Time flew by.
Time flew by.
Really
Yeah. All right. So bye for now. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Don't hang up. All right, Dave. So thank you so much for staying on for the second edition of the Business of Guitar. Dave, you have worked with, I don't know how many people in the industry you haven't worked with, frankly. Your company, anyways, has worked with most of the major manufacturers at this point in time, and, of course, many of the smaller manufacturers, either directly or through distribution partners and resale partners. Really, I just ask, do you have some little insight about what is that little nugget of information about being in the guitar business that you might pay it forward with, you might pass on to others in the industry?
Oh boy, that's a. I wish I could have studied for this question.
Well, I mean, I could be more specific, but I think that you probably have experiences that I don't. So I thought I'd throw it just out to you in general.
Okay.
I hope that's okay.
Yeah. I'm drawing a blank here right now. We're talking about just persistence and not letting something not go right treat it as a failure, as something to learn. That's like business for anybody. It doesn't matter if it's a guitar business or anything else like that. The other thing is building up relationships with people, because it's not any successful business. It's not a one big sale and big. You got to do everything long term. You got to think about. So you're going to lose a little bit of money because the customer made a mistake and he got you to make a mold that was a left-handed mold that was supposed to be a right-handed mold. So there are two ways to treat that. Is we take that little bump in the road, but he's still going to be around for a lot of years, and so we can try to work something that's going to work for him. Maybe work for us, or maybe we're going to take a little bit of a loss. But if you're going to look at this in a long-term situation, you can take those little mistakes that go along the way, and just think of it as, a customer isn't a $20 sale, say a music store. Look how long he's going to buy over for 10 years or something like that. So that $20 sale that customer is like a $5,000 customer, say, over 5 years or whatever like that. Or a guitar manufacturer, they're not one big sale there. That's like, when we start supplying a guitar manufacturer, it's going to be for years, because once you're in their supply chain, it's a less. They've got the nut in the saddle figured out. It's one less headache they have, because they still got to worry about wood, lacquer finishing, and everything, all that other supply chain stuff. So if we can make it so that we're causing the least amount of friction to them of supplying them a product that works and consistently and on time. And if we got to take a hit every once in a while, that's there's a mistake made or something else like that. Like, I'm not out to win an argument here. I want to look at this over 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Just like, Jim DeCola, like, man, we followed each other around. He's been so many places, at different companies and stuff like that. So it's not so I don't never try to come on hard and you got to buy this. And if not, you're dead to me, type of a thing. It's not like the Shark Tank. Like I'm going to be around here for a while, and maybe today's not the day, and maybe this isn't the product, but maybe 5 years from now, it is the time that you do want a nut or a saddle or a bridge, or maybe it's something that you come to us and say, hey, can you fix this? But it's been 5 years, but we've kept in touch. All of a sudden, bang, then we got a connection. Then we can start working together. So it's a long-term commitment. I've obviously been here a long time. 43 years, I think, through Graphite, and I've always thought of everything in business, you got to think long term, you can't think short term. Just making a quick sale, then sell with another guy and another guy and another guy. Too hard to find customers. There's not that many customers in the world, especially in the guitar industry. So you've got to really think long term, because you might be not your customer now and he said no now, that's fine. But 5 years from now, 6 years from now, 10 years from now, it's a whole different situation, a whole different instrument, different parts, whatever else like that. Then you do have a connection. So don't take a no as a permanent no. It's just like, just not now.
Yeah. I have a saying that for years that it's I don't hear no, I hear not that way. And I mean, it's not that I don't know how to take a no, don't get me wrong, but I'll also be thinking about what is it about that, and it might be, later on down the road, it's like, yeah, exactly, we're not doing business today, but maybe we'll later on down the road, and worst case scenario, I've made a new friend.
Right.
And that's all right. There's people I see at the show every year that we've never done business with, that we talk with for decades, and we're in the same industry. We're friends, never exchanged a dollar, I don't think, that's perfectly fine. So keep the door open. Well, great advice, Dave, from someone who has certainly walked the walk and isn't just talking the talk, because you have found a way to successfully do business with, as I said, I'm quite sure almost every guitar company in the industry, or a very large portion anyways, has worked with you. And so, Dave, thank you for what you've contributed to the guitar. Thank you for helping us unstick our nuts. And why did that sound so wrong? And for continuing to just be a good guy who's finding solutions. We need people who are finding solutions, and thank you for that. Thank you for your contributions to the guitar. I sincerely mean that.
Oh, well, hey, it's not even work. So I've never really worked a day in my life. I've coached baseball, I've played in bands, and I've invent stuff. So it's easy to be there long term. But and thanks for the advice on trying to figure myself out psychologically.
You don't need to. I'm curious. I like to go deeper. I'm the guy who wants to know why all the time. Why? Why did you say that? Why did you do that? Why are you like that? So I hope I don't get an email from you a couple of weeks from now saying I'm in therapy. Things are not going well, Jamie. And wish I'd never met you.
I can't think of any more ideas. I just think of why. But, well, that's what I do. That's what I do with products. Is that I just go why? Why is it done that way? And then well, you could do it that way. Oh, the reason they don't do it that way is because of that. But but it gets you thinking, Yeah.
Exactly. Well, great. Thanks again, Dave.
Yep.
Say goodbye for now, and I look forward to our next conversation.
And you bet. Have a good tour.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ciao for now.
Okay, Jimmy. Okay, bye-bye.
You've been listening to Life with Strings Attached. If today's conversation meant something to you, consider passing it on. These stories find their place through the people who share them. A new episode comes out every Friday, right here, wherever you're listening. I'm Jamie Gale, and thanks for listening to Life with Strings Attached.